Why did it take so long to catch Jeffrey Dahmer? Suspenseful music swells. The visuals fade in, a dimly lit street, a flickering street lamp, and a shadowy figure walking into the darkness. A voice cuts through the looming tension, the chilling story of Jeffrey Dahmer, a seemingly ordinary man who committed horrific murders while hiding in plain sight. How did a man like Jeffrey Dahmer, the quiet neighbor next door, carry out 17 murders over 13 years without being stopped? And more hauntingly, why did it take so long for anyone to realize what he was doing? This is not just a tale of horror, it's a grim reminder of missed chances, overlooked warning signs, and a community that unknowingly walked alongside a monster. This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't the kind of man to draw attention to himself. He wasn't the shadowy, lurking figure most people imagine when they think of a dangerous criminal. Instead, he was quiet, awkward, and unassuming, a loner whose demeanor betrayed nothing of the darkness he held inside. To many of those around him, Dahmer was just another neighbor in the bustling city of Milwaukee. He blended in, walking unnoticed through the crowd. But behind this facade lay a man capable of unspeakable acts. His disarming normality gave him a mask of invisibility, one he used to shield his horrific actions from the world. From 1978 to 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror claimed 17 lives. His victims were often young men and boys, many of whom were vulnerable and trusting. Dahmer lured them in with promises, perhaps dinner, companionship, or help with something small. His crimes were as brutal as they were horrifying, acts that went far beyond murder, involving dismemberment and disturbing attempts to preserve parts of his victims. These heinous actions turned his small apartment into a macabre chamber of horrors. But despite the gruesome nature of his crimes, no one realized what was happening, not even those living just feet away. Each of these victims, they weren't nameless faces. They were sons, friends, brothers, human lives snuffed out by a man whose darkness seemed to know no bounds. What makes Dahmer's story even more disturbing is how openly he carried out these crimes. He lived in an apartment building, in a community surrounded by people. Neighbors heard strange noises, complaints were raised about foul-smelling odors wafting from his unit, yet nothing was done. How could someone so dangerous remain hidden? The unsettling irony is that Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't in complete isolation while committing his crimes. He interacted with neighbors, occasionally exchanging pleasantries. Complaints about his apartment's stench were routinely dismissed as bad cooking or a broken refrigerator. There were more direct, glaring moments when Dahmer could have been stopped. Perhaps the most haunting example came in 1991, mere months before his capture. On May 27, 1991, two women called police after finding a young, disoriented boy wandering the streets near Dahmer's apartment. 15-year-old Konorak Synthesomphone, drugged and bleeding, was unable to articulate what was happening to him. The scene screamed danger. Something was clearly wrong, but when officers arrived, Dahmer, calm and composed, convinced them that Konorak was his adult lover who had simply had too much to drink. Incredibly, despite the women's protests, the officers returned the boy to Dahmer's custody. What happened next was devastating. Konorak became Dahmer's next victim. The tragedy of this encounter cannot be overstated. It was a moment that could have saved a life and ended Jeffrey Dahmer's spree much earlier. This wasn't just a failure by two officers, but a glaring reflection of systemic negligence. Whether it was rooted in prejudice, incompetence, or a blind trust in appearances, the outcome was the same. A killer was allowed to continue unchecked. Everything changed on the night of July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, a name forever etched in this grim tale, escaped from Dahmer's grasp. His courage and quick thinking not only saved his own life, but finally brought an end to Jeffrey Dahmer's horrific crimes. Edwards had been lured to Dahmer's apartment like so many others before him, but unlike the others, he found a way to break free. As Dahmer's mask of control slipped, Edwards seized the opportunity to flee, running into the street and flagging down police. When officers arrived at Dahmer's apartment, the horrors inside quickly unraveled before them. What they discovered defied comprehension. Polaroid photographs of dismembered bodies, human remains stored in various states, and what could only be described as a living nightmare. The now infamous apartment, Unit 213, was no ordinary crime scene. It was a house of horrors on an unimaginable scale. Police found severed heads, preserved body parts, and evidence of attempts to create keepsakes or trophies from his victims. The air was thick with decay, a grim testament to the evil that had festered there undetected for so long. These revelations shocked not only the local community but the nation. The quiet, awkward man next door had been living as one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history, and no one had stopped him. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer didn't end with his capture. It unfolded further in courtrooms and newsrooms across the world. Dahmer confessed to his crimes in chilling detail, showing little emotion as he described the lives he had taken and the horror he had created. He was sentenced to 15 life terms in prison, ensuring he would never walk free. But justice in this case felt hollow. It couldn't bring back the 17 lives, nor could it undo the pain and devastation left in his wake. Dahmer's own life ended violently in 1994 when he was killed by a fellow inmate. While some saw this as karmic justice, others viewed it as an abrupt end to a story that still raised so many questions. The true tragedy of the Jeffrey Dahmer case lies in the warning signs, the opportunities to intervene that were missed time and time again. Complaints by neighbors, cries for help, the unsettling encounter with Conorak, each was a chance for someone to see the truth. Instead, prejudice, apathy, and a reluctance to question appearances allowed Dahmer to continue his spree far longer than he should have. It's not just a failure of individuals, but of systems, law enforcement, community response, and society at large. Dahmer's case highlights the dangers of dismissing or downplaying concerns, as well as the harm wrought by biases that blind us to realities we'd rather not confront. True crime stories like Jeffrey Dahmer's aren't just about the crimes. They're a mirror reflecting the flaws and vulnerabilities in our communities. Dahmer was able to continue because those around him either failed to see or chose to ignore the signs. The responsibility here cuts deeper. As individuals and as a society, vigilance is critical. Listening, acting on complaints, and refusing to brush off suspicions could make all the difference in preventing similar tragedies. This is not merely a tale of one man's horrifying actions. It's a call to examine the systems that failed and think about how we can do better. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer leaves us with an unsettling truth. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they're the quiet man across the hall, the one who smiles in passing but hides unspeakable darkness. As the screen fades to black, the final words echo in the air. How many more lives could have been saved if the warning signs hadn't been ignored? Lingering, suspenseful music plays as the visuals shift from the haunting sights of Dahmer's past to a simple, reflective question. Could this happen again? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like to show your support. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from Evil Unmasked. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below with your theories or suggestions for future topics. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.